Perhaps she should fetch coffee instead. The words cut through courtroom 4B like a blade across skin. Simone Halstead stood at the defense table, a stack of manila folders pressed against her chest. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. 12 jurors shifted in their seats, a few covering smirks with their hands. The prosecutor, Warren Kavanaugh, 23 years in the Collier County District Attorney's Office, silver hair slicked back, red tie knotted tight against his throat, didn't bother looking at her when he said it. He addressed the judge instead, one hand gesturing lazily toward the defense table. "Your Honor, the defense's little assistant seems confused about which exhibit we're discussing." Laughter. Scattered. From the gallery. From the jury box. From the bailiff standing by the door. Simone did not move. She had been in this courtroom for 7 months. 7 months of comments like this. 7 months of watching Warren Kavanaugh destroy lives with a smile and a statute citation. 7 months of silence. But Warren Kavanaugh did not know what she knew. He did not know about the device sewn into the lining of her blazer. He did not know about the encrypted folder on her laptop containing 147 audio files. He did not know that every word he had spoken in this courthouse for the past 212 days had been recorded, cataloged, and transmitted to a federal server in Quantico, Virginia. Warren Kavanaugh thought he was mocking a paralegal. He was mocking an FBI special agent with a warrant. Judge Franklin Oberlin tapped his gavel twice. "We'll take a 15-minute recess." Kavanaugh gathered his papers, brushed past Simone on his way to the door. His shoulder connected with hers. Deliberate, hard enough to shift her weight. He leaned close enough for only her to hear. "Stay in your lane, girl." Then he was gone, the oak door swinging shut behind him. Simone stood alone at the defense table. She opened the top folder, the Brady material Kavanaugh claimed she had lost, and looked at the timestamp on the first page. 8:52 a.m. His signature. His handwriting. She closed the folder, pulled out her phone, typed 3 words into a black screen. Phase 2. Tomorrow. The message disappeared the moment it sent. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. 3 weeks earlier, the Collier County Public Defender's Office smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. Simone arrived at 7:15 a.m. before the sun had fully cleared the palm trees outside the window. The office was a cramped rectangle on the 3rd floor of the county administrative building, filing cabinets lining every wall, case files stacked on every surface, a single window unit air conditioner wheezing against the Florida humidity. She set her bag on the metal desk in the corner, began organizing the files from yesterday, color-coded tabs, chronological order, cross-referenced by defendant name and case number. It was a system, her system, the kind of system that looked obsessive to anyone watching, the kind of system that made it very easy to track patterns. Yolanda Baptiste arrived at 7:45, balancing a travel mug and a stack of motions that threatened to topple at any moment. She was 52 years old, a public defender for 18 of those years, and she moved through the office like a woman who had long ago stopped expecting the world to be fair. "Simone," she paused at the doorway, eyebrows raised. "You don't have to beat me here every morning. I like the quiet." Simone aligned the last folder with the edge of the desk. Easier to review files without interruptions. Yolanda studied her for a moment. Something flickered behind her eyes, curiosity maybe, or suspicion, but it passed quickly. "Well, I appreciate the dedication. Lord knows I need someone who actually reads the files." She disappeared into her office. The door clicked shut. Simone opened her laptop, created a new entry in the spreadsheet she kept hidden behind 3 layers of encryption. Day 1, week 27. No significant contact with primary targets. She saved the file, closed the laptop, began the work of appearing ordinary. The Collier County Courthouse opened its doors at 8:30 a.m. Simone walked through the main entrance, past the metal detectors, past the X-ray machines, past the sign that read, "Collier County, Justice for all in faded gold letters. The bailiff at the security checkpoint was a man named Tate Reddick, 6'3", 240 pounds, former linebacker for a Division II college in Georgia, according to the personnel file Simone had accessed through channels she was not supposed to have. He watched her approach, did not smile. Bag. Simone lifted her messenger bag onto the conveyor belt. Open it. She unzipped the main compartment. Reddick reached inside, rifled through the contents. Legal pads, pens, a granola bar, a small bottle of hand sanitizer. His fingers lingered on a leather notebook at the bottom. What's this? Personal notes. About what? Grocery lists, appointments. Simone met his gaze, held it. Nothing interesting. Reddick flipped through the pages, saw nothing but mundane entries. Milk, eggs, dentist Tuesday, call mom. He did not see the entries written in UV reactive ink on the pages beneath, the ink that only appeared under a specific wavelength of light, the ink that cataloged dates, names, case numbers, and dollar amounts. He tossed the notebook back into the bag. Move along. He jerked his chin toward the woman in line behind her. You're holding everyone up. Simone zipped her bag, walked through the checkpoint, did not look back. The records room on the second floor was a maze of filing cabinets and outdated computer terminals. Claudette Mays presided over it like a queen over her domain, seated behind a high counter, reading glasses perched on her nose, a nameplate that read, Records Supervisor, in brass letters. Simone approached with a request form in hand. I need a copy of the motion filed in State v. Patterson, case number 2024-CF-002847. Claudette did not look up from her computer screen. Form 14C, 20-minute wait. The form I'm holding is 14C. Now Claudette looked up. Her eyes traveled from Simone's face to her clothes, the second-hand blazer, the sensible flats, the absence of jewelry, and something like satisfaction settled into her expression. Then you filled it out wrong. Section 3B needs the filing attorney's bar number. The filing attorney is Yolanda Baptiste. Her bar number is 847291. I wrote it in Section 3B. Claudette snatched the form, examined it, found nothing wrong. Her lips thinned. 20-minute wait. Simone nodded, took a seat on the plastic bench against the wall. A white woman in a designer suit approached the counter 2 minutes later. Claudette smiled, retrieved her requested documents immediately, wished her a pleasant day. Simone waited 43 minutes. When she finally received the motion, she noted the time in her leather notebook. The entry would later be transcribed into her encrypted file. Records room. Discriminatory service delays. 43 minutes wait versus 2 minutes for white attorney. Claudette Mays. 9:17 a.m. Patterns. Always patterns. Courtroom 4B was Judge Franklin Oberlin's domain. He was 61 years old, with a face that belonged on a country club brochure, tanned, affable, quick to laugh at his own jokes. He had been on the bench for 14 years. He had never been reversed by an appellate court. This was not because he was a good judge. It was because the people he ruled against could not afford appeals. Simone took her seat in the gallery, 3 rows behind the defense table. Yolanda was already there, conferring with her client. A young black man named Darnell Webb, charged with possession of a controlled substance. Warren Kavanaugh entered through the side door. He moved like a man who had never been told no in his life. Shoulders back, chin lifted, eyes scanning the room as if taking inventory of everything he owned. His gaze passed over Simone. Dismissed her. Good morning, Yolanda. He set his briefcase on the prosecution table. Another hopeless cause today? Good morning, Warren. Another innocent man you're trying to lock up? Kavanaugh smiled. It did not reach his eyes. Innocent. He repeated the word like it was a joke. Your client was found with 30 grams of marijuana in his glove compartment. The only question is whether he gets 2 years or 5. The search was conducted without a warrant. You know that. I know what the police report says. Kavanaugh's smile widened. And I know what Judge Oberlin will say. Motion denied. We both know how this ends. Simone watched the exchange, noted the casual cruelty in Kavanaugh's voice, the resignation in Yolanda's shoulders. This was not justice. This was theater. The hearing lasted 47 minutes. Yolanda filed a motion to suppress the evidence. The marijuana had been found during an illegal search, she argued, in violation of her client's Fourth Amendment rights. Kavanaugh responded with a single sentence. The search was conducted pursuant to the automobile exception, Your Honor. Judge Oberlin did not ask for case citations, did not request briefs, did not allow Yolanda to present her supporting evidence. He simply said, "Motion denied." Darnell Webb was convicted, sentenced to 3 years in state prison. As the bailiff led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at Yolanda, at Simone. His eyes held a question that had no answer. Why? Simone wrote in her notebook, State versus Webb. Motion to suppress denied without reasoning. 10:47 a.m. Oberlin pattern continues. She had documented 43 similar rulings in 7 months. 43 defendants, all black or Latino, whose constitutional rights had been ignored with a wave of Judge Oberlin's hand. 43 people serving sentences they should never have received. The pattern was clear. Now she needed proof of why. The cafeteria on the first floor served food that could generously be described as edible. Simone sat alone at a corner table, eating a sandwich she had brought from home. The room was crowded with court employees, attorneys, witnesses waiting to be called. Conversations buzzed around her like static. She was invisible here. That was the point. A group of clerks settled at the table next to hers, Claudette Mays among them, holding court like she held records requests, with casual disdain for anyone she deemed beneath her. "Did you see the new girl?" Claudette's voice carried easily. "Yolanda's assistant? The one who dresses like she shops at Goodwill?" "That's the one." Claudette stirred her coffee. "I heard she doesn't even have a paralegal certificate. Yolanda hired her because of, diversity quotas?" "I didn't say it." Claudette smiled. "But you're thinking what I'm thinking." Laughter, sharp and knowing. Simone continued eating her sandwich. Her expression did not change, but she recorded every word. The device in her blazer had a range of 15 feet and crystal-clear audio quality. Hostile work environment documentation, 12:34 p.m. Claudette Mays, unidentified clerks. Racially discriminatory remarks. The file would be added to the others. The pattern would continue to emerge. That evening, Simone drove her 2011 Honda Civic back to a one-bedroom apartment in a complex off Route 41. The apartment was deliberately unremarkable. Beige walls, beige carpet, furniture that could have come from any rental showroom in America. No photographs, no personal touches, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived there. She locked the door behind her, drew the blinds, swept the apartment for listening devices, a habit from training that had never left her. Clean. She opened her laptop, connected to a VPN that routed through 3 different countries. Accessed the encrypted folder marked Operation Courthouse. Inside, 147 audio files, 89 photographs of documents, 34 transcripts, 12 intercepted emails from the courthouse server, 7 months of work. Not enough. Not yet. She opened a secure messaging application. A single contact appeared. Handler. Status report, she typed. The response came 60 seconds later. Proceed. Targets maintaining pattern. Oberlin denied another suppression motion today without legal basis. Kavanaugh coordinating with bench. Suspected but not confirmed. Need direct evidence of financial connection. A pause. Then, timeline? Minimum 3 weeks. Mendez sentencing scheduled for next month. If pattern holds, that's when they'll make their move. Another pause. Longer this time. Approved. Maintain cover. Do not engage unless extraction required. Simone closed the application, deleted the conversation, cleared the cache. She sat in the darkness of her apartment, laptop light casting shadows across her face. 7 months of being no one. 7 months of swallowing insults, documenting abuse, watching innocent people go to prison. 3 more weeks. She could do 3 more weeks. The next morning brought rain, sheets of it, drumming against the courthouse windows like impatient fingers. Simone arrived at 7:30. The office was empty. She began her routine, organizing files, reviewing case notes, preparing exhibits for the day's hearings. At 8:15, her phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number. "Reddick asked about you yesterday. Watch your back." She deleted the message. Did not respond. The warning was unnecessary. She had already noticed Tate Reddick's increased attention. The way his eyes followed her through the security checkpoint. The way he stood a little too close when she passed him in the hallway. The way his questions had shifted from routine to probing. He suspected something. He just didn't know what. The security checkpoint was more crowded than usual. A line of attorneys, witnesses, and courthouse employees snaked back toward the main entrance, everyone grumbling about the weather and the wait. Simone took her place at the end of the line, waited. Reddick was working the checkpoint himself today, unusual for a senior bailiff. He moved through the line slowly, methodically, selecting certain people for additional screening. All of them were black. "Step aside." He gestured to a young black man in a suit. "Random search." "I'm an attorney. I have a hearing in 10 minutes. "Random search." Reddick's hand moved to his belt. "Step aside." The attorney stepped aside. Reddick searched his briefcase, his pockets, the lining of his jacket, found nothing, waved him through with a smirk. The line moved forward. Simone reached the checkpoint, placed her bag on the conveyor belt. Reddick did not wave her through. "Step aside." "I went through this line yesterday." "And you're going through it again today." He leaned closer. His breath smelled like coffee and something sour. "Random search." Simone stepped aside. Stepped. Reddick was thorough, more thorough than yesterday. He emptied her bag entirely, examined every item, flipped through every page of her notebook. He ran his hands along the seams of her blazer. Once, twice, pressing hard enough to feel for anything hidden beneath the fabric. The recording device was sewn into the lining near the collar. His fingers passed within an inch of it. They did not find it. Clean. He tossed her belongings back into her bag. For now, Simone gathered her things, walked through the checkpoint. Her heart was steady. Her hands did not shake. She had been trained for this. Courtroom 4B was already in session when Simone arrived. The case was State versus Torres, a 28-year-old Hispanic man accused of aggravated assault. The alleged victim was a white woman who claimed Torres had threatened her in a parking lot. Torres claimed self-defense. The woman had followed him to his car, screaming racial slurs. He had told her to back off. She had called the police. Yolanda was presenting the defense. Kavanaugh was smiling. "Your Honor," Yolanda said, "we have security footage from the parking lot that clearly shows my client retreating from the alleged victim." He made no threatening gestures. "The footage is inadmissible," Kavanaugh interrupted. "Chain of custody issues." "What chain of custody issues?" "The footage was obtained directly from the store's security company." The defense failed to properly authenticate the footage under Florida Evidence Code 90.901. Kavanaugh spread his hands. "Rules are rules, Yolanda." Judge Oberlin nodded. "The footage is excluded." Yolanda's jaw tightened. "Your Honor, without this footage, my client cannot demonstrate." "The ruling stands." Oberlin's gavel came down. "Proceed without the footage." Simone watched from the gallery, wrote in her notebook, "State versus Torres, exculpatory evidence excluded on pretextual grounds. 9:23 a.m. The pattern continued. During the morning recess, Simone went to the records room to retrieve a transcript. Claudette Mays was not at the counter. A younger clerk, a white woman with a nervous smile, took her request. "Oh, this should just be a minute." She disappeared into the filing cabinets. Returned 30 seconds later with the document. Here you go. Anything else? No. Thank you. Simone turned to leave. Claudette Mays was standing in the doorway, blocking her path. Where do you think you're going? Back to the courtroom. With a transcript you didn't sign out properly? Claudette held up a clipboard. Form 27B requires a supervisor's signature, which you don't have. The other clerk didn't mention a form. The other clerk is new. Claudette's smile was thin. I'm not. Give me the transcript. Simone held the document. Did not move. Florida Rule of Judicial Administration 2.420 states that transcripts must be provided within 24 hours of request without additional procedural barriers. Her voice was calm, level. I made this request yesterday. The 24 hours expired at 9:15 this morning. You are required by law to release this document. Claudette's smile faltered. The younger clerk stared. The room went silent. Simone did not blink. Claudette stepped aside. Fine. Her voice was ice. Take it. Simone walked past her, did not look back, but she felt Claudette's eyes on her all the way to the elevator. Target identified me as a threat, she noted later. Escalation likely. The afternoon brought the Mendez preliminary hearing. Angela Mendez was 43 years old, a registered nurse with 20 years of experience. She was charged with insurance fraud, allegedly submitting false claims for procedures she never performed. The evidence against her was thin. The claims in question had been approved by her supervisor, a white man named David Wexler. Wexler was not charged with any crime. Kavanaugh presented the case with theatrical outrage. This woman, he said, pointing at Angela Mendez like she was a disease, betrayed the trust of her patients. She exploited the healthcare system for personal gain. She is exactly the kind of predator that... Objection. Yolanda stood. Argumentative and prejudicial. Overruled. Judge Oberlin did not look up from his notes. Continue, Mr. Kavanaugh. Exactly the kind of predator that our justice system was designed to stop. Simone watched Angela Mendez's face, watched the fear, the confusion, the slow realization that the outcome of this hearing had been decided before she ever walked into the room. The preliminary hearing lasted 2 hours. Angela Mendez was bound over for trial. As she was led from the courtroom, she passed Simone's row. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Simone saw a woman who had done nothing wrong, a woman whose life was about to be destroyed because someone needed a conviction, and she was the easiest target. This is why, Simone thought. This is why I'm here. She wrote in her notebook, State versus Mendez. Selective prosecution pattern. Wexler not charged. 2:47 p.m. Right now, we're watching someone's life get destroyed by a corrupt system. But stay with me, because the person documenting every moment of this injustice, she's not who they think she is. The parking garage at 5:45 p.m. was nearly empty. Simone walked to her car, keys in hand, scanning the shadows out of habit. The overhead lights flickered. Half of them burnt out, never replaced. She was 20 feet from her Civic when she saw it. The rear tire on the driver's side. Flat. Not just flat. Slashed. A clean cut along the sidewall, too precise to be accidental. She crouched, examined the damage, took a photograph with her phone. Footsteps behind her. Having trouble? Tate Reddick emerged from between two parked cars. He was out of uniform. Jeans, a polo shirt, arms crossed over his chest. Just a flat tire. Simone stood. I'll call roadside assistance. This late? Could take hours. Reddick stepped closer. Dangerous to wait around here alone. Bad things happen in parking garages. I appreciate the concern. It's not concern. His voice dropped. It's a warning. The distance between them narrowed. 10 feet, 8, 6. Simone did not back away. A warning about what? About asking questions. Reddick was close enough now that she could smell his cologne. Something cheap and overpowering. About taking notes. About looking at people like you're keeping score. I'm a paralegal. Taking notes is my job. Your job is to sit down, shut up, and do what you're told. His hand shot out, grabbed her arm above the elbow, squeezed hard enough to bruise. People who don't understand that tend to have accidents. Simone felt the pressure, felt the threat behind it. She had been trained for this too. Let go of my arm. Or what? Reddick laughed. You going to file a complaint? To who? You think anyone in that courthouse gives a damn about some nobody paralegal with an attitude problem? The security camera on level 2 covers this section of the garage. Simone's voice did not waver. Timestamp right now is 5:52 p.m. If you don't release my arm in the next 3 seconds, that footage becomes evidence in a section 784.048 stalking charge. Reddick's grip loosened. Not from fear, from confusion. How do you know about the camera? I pay attention. Simone pulled her arm free, stepped back. That's my job. She walked to the elevator, did not run, did not look back. Reddick did not follow, but she knew, as the elevator doors closed, that this was not over. It was just beginning. That night, Simone sat in her apartment with an ice pack pressed against the bruise forming on her arm. Her laptop was open. The encrypted folder was displayed. She added the photograph of her slashed tire, added a note about Reddick's threat, added the timestamp. Then she opened the secure messaging application. Physical intimidation from Reddick. He's watching me. May have compromised cover. The response came in under a minute. Do you want extraction? Simone looked at the folder. 153 files now. 47 documented cases of judicial misconduct. Financial records that suggested money changing hands between unknown parties. Not enough. Not yet. Negative, she typed. I can handle Reddick. Need 2 more weeks minimum. Acknowledged. Report any escalation immediately. She closed the application, closed the laptop. The bruise on her arm throbbed. She had worn worse. The next 3 days passed in a blur of courtroom hearings, records requests, and careful documentation. Simone moved through the courthouse like a ghost, present but unremarkable, watching everything, saying nothing. She documented 17 additional instances of discriminatory treatment. She recorded 4 more hearings where Judge Oberlin ruled against defendants without legal justification. She avoided Tate Reddick when possible. When it wasn't possible, she made sure to be in public spaces, surrounded by witnesses. He watched her, always watching. But he did not approach again. Claudette Mays, however, had found other ways to make her life difficult. Your request was denied. Claudette handed back a form that Simone had filed the day before. Insufficient documentation. This form was complete when I submitted it. Then why is Section 4A blank? Claudette pointed to a box that Simone knew, with absolute certainty, she had filled in. Someone had erased her entry. The box showed signs of whiteout. I filled that in. Did you? Claudette's smile was innocent. Because I'm looking at a blank box. Maybe you should double-check your work before you waste my time. Simone took the form, did not argue. Document tampering, she noted later. Claudette Mays. Evidence of coordinated obstruction. The pattern was expanding. On the 4th day, Garrett Novak found her in the law library. He was a defense attorney in private practice, one of the few who regularly appeared before Judge Oberlin. 42 years old, with graying temples and the kind of weary expression that suggested he had seen too much and expected even worse. Mind if I sit? Simone looked up from the case file she was reviewing. It's a public space. He sat across from her, placed a coffee cup on the table between them. I've been watching you. That seems to be a popular hobby around here. Not like that. Novak leaned back in his chair. I've been watching how you work, how you take notes, how you handle Kavanaugh's nonsense. And you're not a paralegal. Simone's expression did not change. Excuse me? I've worked with 100 paralegals. They take notes because they're told to. You take notes because you're building something. He nodded toward her leather notebook. That's not a grocery list in there. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. Novak sipped his coffee. I'm not going to ask who you really are. Honestly, I don't want to know. But I will tell you this. Whatever you're doing, be careful. Why? Because Kavanaugh and Oberlin have been running this courthouse for over a decade. They've destroyed better people than you, better people than me. He stood. Whatever you're collecting in that notebook, make sure you have somewhere safe to put it when the walls start closing in. He walked away without waiting for a response. Simone watched him go. Novak suspects. Does not appear hostile. Possible ally. Proceed with caution. That night, the encrypted folder received its most important addition yet. Simone had planted a recording device in Judge Oberlin's chambers 6 weeks earlier, concealed in the base of a potted plant that had been donated by a courthouse beautification committee that did not exist. The device transmitted intermittently to avoid detection. Most of the recordings were useless. Administrative conversations, phone calls with family members, the mundane business of being a judge. But tonight's transmission was different. Simone plugged in her headphones, pressed play, static, then voices. The Mendez case. I need a guarantee. Oberlin's voice, unmistakable. You'll get your guarantee. A second voice, male, familiar but not immediately identifiable. She goes down for the full 5 years. No early release, no reduced charges. And my payment? Same as always. The Cayman account. We'll do 15 this time. It's a bigger case. 15,000? Oberlin laughed. For a 5-year sentence? That's 3,000 a year. I want 20. Silence. Then the second voice. Fine. 20. But she takes the plea. No trial. I'll make sure of it. The recording ended. Simone sat motionless for a long time. $15,000. $20,000. That was the price of Angela Mendez's freedom. That was the price of 5 years of her life. She replayed the recording, listened for any identifying features in the second voice. The cadence was familiar. Someone she had heard speak in the courthouse, maybe, but she could not place it. Not yet. She saved the file, backed it up to 3 separate servers, created a transcript with timestamps and speaker identifications. Then she opened the secure messaging application. Evidence of judicial bribery secured. Recording attached. Second voice unidentified. Need more time to confirm. The response was immediate. Excellent work. Do not engage. Continue documentation. We'll send analysis team to verify voice print. Simone closed the application. $20,000. That was how much Angela Mendez's life was worth to these people. The next morning, everything changed. Simone arrived at the courthouse at 7:30, went through security. Reddick was not on duty, replaced by a young deputy who barely glanced at her bag, made her way to the 3rd floor. Yolanda was waiting in the office. Her face was pale. Simone closed the door. Simone closed the door, sat down. The court issued a motion this morning. Yolanda slid a document across the desk. You've been banned from courtroom 4B pending a background investigation. Simone read the document. Judge Oberlin's signature at the bottom. Kavanaugh listed as the requesting party. On what grounds? They claim there are irregularities in your employment file. Questions about your credentials. Yolanda rubbed her temples. Warren is saying you falsified your paralegal certification. I didn't. I know. I've seen your paperwork. Yolanda looked at her. Really looked at her, for the first time since Simone had started working there. But it doesn't matter what I know. What matters is what Oberlin signs. And he signed this. Simone set the document down. How long is the investigation? They're saying 4 to 6 weeks. Could be longer. Yolanda's voice cracked. Simone, I'm sorry. I tried to fight it, but... Don't apologize. Simone stood. This isn't your fault. Then whose fault is it? Simone did not answer. She knew exactly whose fault it was. The ban from courtroom 4B changed everything and nothing. Everything, because she could no longer document hearings directly, could no longer watch Oberlin make his corrupt rulings in real time, could no longer sit in the gallery while Kavanaugh destroyed lives with his smile and his statutes. Nothing, because the recording devices were still active. The server was still collecting. The patterns were still emerging. But Simone knew, with the cold certainty of someone who had spent 7 months learning how her enemies operated, that the ban was not about her credentials. It was about silencing her. They had noticed her. They had noticed her notes. They had decided she was a threat. The question was, how far would they go to eliminate that threat? She found out 3 days later. It was evening. The courthouse had closed an hour earlier. Simone was walking to her car, a new tire installed, the old one photographed and cataloged, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Tate Reddick was not alone this time. There were 2 others with him. Men she did not recognize, large, unsmiling, blocking the path to the exit. "I thought we had an understanding." Reddick stepped forward. "I thought you understood that some questions don't get asked." "I haven't asked any questions." "No?" He pulled something from his pocket, a piece of paper folded twice. "Then why did I find this in my locker?" He unfolded it, showed her. It was a printout of a FOIA request. Her FOIA request, for disciplinary records of Collier County Courthouse personnel. "3 complaints against me," Reddick said softly, "all unfounded, all buried. And now some paralegal is digging them up?" Simone's mind raced. The FOIA request had been filed through official channels, anonymous, routed through a shell identity. There was no way Reddick should have seen it, unless someone at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement had leaked it, unless the corruption ran deeper than she had imagined. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Reddick nodded to the men behind him. "Hold her." They moved fast, faster than she expected. One grabbed her left arm, twisted it behind her back. The other clamped a hand over her mouth before she could scream. Reddick stepped closer. His face was inches from hers. "I'm going to ask you one time. Who are you working for?" Simone's training kicked in. She stomped down hard on the foot of the man holding her left arm. His grip loosened for half a second, long enough for her to drive her elbow into his ribs. He grunted, released her. The second man swung his fist. She ducked, felt the air whistle past her ear, drove her knee into his thigh, targeting the nerve cluster. He went down. Reddick stared. "How the—" Simone ran. She did not look back, did not slow down, sprinted for the exit, burst through the doors, ran across the parking lot to where a security guard was making his rounds. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She was breathing hard. Her arm ached where the first man had twisted it, but she was okay. "Fine." She forced her voice to steady. "Just thought I saw something. False alarm." The security guard looked skeptical but did not press. Simone got in her car, drove away. In the rearview mirror, she saw Reddick emerge from the building, saw him watch her go. His face was a mask of cold fury. "Cover is compromised," she typed that night. 3 assailants. Reddick plus 2 unidentified. Physical assault attempted. I escaped. They know I'm investigating. The response was 30 seconds longer than usual. Pack essential documents. Prepare for potential extraction. Do not return to courthouse until further notice. Negative, she typed. If I disappear now, they'll destroy evidence. The recording device in Oberlin's office won't survive a sweep. Your safety is priority 1. Justice for the people they've destroyed is priority 1. I have 2 more days. The Mendez sentencing is Friday. That's when they'll make the payment. That's when we get everything. Another long pause. 48 hours. Then extraction, regardless of status. Simone closed the application. 48 hours. She could do a lot of damage in 48 hours. The next day, Simone did not go to the courthouse. She went to the Collier County Clerk's office instead. A separate building, different jurisdiction, different set of eyes. She filed 7 FOIA requests. She requested property records for Judge Franklin Oberlin. She requested financial disclosures for Warren Kavanaugh. She requested communications logs for the courthouse administrative server. Most of the requests would be denied or delayed, but some would slip through, and one of them, a request for travel reimbursement records submitted by county employees, came back within 2 hours. Judge Franklin Oberlin had taken 17 trips to Grand Cayman in the past 3 years. All of them listed as personal vacation. All of them coinciding with major sentencing decisions in his courtroom. Travel records obtained, she reported. Pattern confirmation. Oberlin visits Cayman after significant rulings. Correlates with suspected bribe payments. Excellent. Analysis team confirms voice print from your recording matches Warren Kavanaugh. Secondary party now identified. Simone read the message twice. Kavanaugh, the prosecutor. He was the one paying Oberlin. It made sense once she thought about it. Kavanaugh had a 97% conviction rate. Unheard of for any prosecutor, let alone one handling major felonies. His cases never went to appeal because defendants couldn't afford the lawyers. His victims, almost all black and Latino, disappeared into the prison system without anyone asking questions. And Oberlin made it all possible. Denied motions, excluded evidence, instructed juries to convict. They were partners, co-conspirators, running a justice system designed to destroy the lives of people who could not fight back. Simone thought about Marcus Delroy, about Angela Mendez, about the 47 cases she had documented. How many lives had been ruined by these two men? How many years of freedom had been stolen? How much money had changed hands in the shadows while innocent people rotted in prison? She did not know the exact numbers, but she would find out. This story is just getting started. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happens next will shock you. Friday arrived with the weight of inevitability. Simone was not at the courthouse. She was not supposed to be anywhere near it. Her handler had been clear, 48 hours, then extraction. But she was there anyway, not inside, not in the gallery, not in the records room. She was across the street, in a coffee shop with a clear view of the courthouse steps. She had a laptop open in front of her, headphones in her ears, a half-finished latte growing cold at her elbow. The recording device in Oberlin's office was still transmitting. The Mendez sentencing was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:37, Oberlin's voice came through her headphones. "Is everything arranged?" 20,000, same as we discussed. Kavanaugh's voice this time. Clear, unmistakable. The account in Georgetown. Wire transfer as soon as she's sentenced. And the appeal? There won't be an appeal. Baptiste doesn't have the resources, and Mendez can't afford private counsel. She'll take her 5 years, and we'll never hear from her again. A pause. Then Oberlin. What about the paralegal? Halstead? Kavanaugh laughed. Reddick's handling it. She won't be a problem much longer. Good. I don't like loose ends. Neither do I. The transmission went to static. Simone saved the recording, backed it up, created a timestamp. Then she did something she was not supposed to do. She sent a text message to an unmonitored number. Garrett Novak. Meet me at the coffee shop across from the courthouse. Now. It's about Oberlin. 10 minutes later, Novak walked through the door. He looked nervous. He looked suspicious. He looked like a man who was not sure if he was walking into a trap. He sat down across from her. Halstead, I heard you were banned from the courthouse. I was. Then why are you... Listen. She pulled out her headphones, placed them on the table between them. I'm going to tell you something, and when I'm done, you're going to have a choice to make. Novak stared at her, did not speak. I'm not a paralegal, Simone said. I'm a federal agent, FBI. I've been undercover in this courthouse for 7 months, documenting a judicial corruption scheme involving Warren Kavanaugh and Judge Franklin Oberlin. Novak's face went pale. In approximately 20 minutes, Angela Mendez is going to be sentenced to 5 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit. That sentence has already been purchased, $20,000, wired to an offshore account in Grand Cayman. How do you... Because I have recordings. Simone leaned forward. I have financial records. I have travel logs, calendar entries, and 47 documented cases of coordinated misconduct. I have enough to bring down Kavanaugh, Oberlin, and everyone who helped them. Novak swallowed. Why are you telling me this? Because I need a witness, someone on the inside, someone who can testify to what they've seen. She met his eyes. You've been watching them for 2 years. You told me so yourself. You know something is wrong. You just couldn't prove it. And now you can? Now I can. Simone pushed the headphones across the table. Listen, then decide. Novak picked up the headphones, put them in his ears. Simone pressed play. For 3 minutes he listened. His face went from pale to gray to something approaching green. When the recording ended, he removed the headphones with shaking hands. That's Kavanaugh. And Oberlin. Yes. They're talking about bribes, about sentencing an innocent woman, about... He stopped, looked at Simone. About you. Yes. They said Reddick is handling it, that you won't be a problem much longer. I'm aware. And you're still here? Simone did not blink. The Mendez sentencing is in 15 minutes. I need to be here when it happens. I need one more piece of evidence. Oberlin sentencing her despite the recordings proving his corruption. That's the final piece. That's what completes the chain. And then? And then I make one phone call and DOJ Civil Rights Division sends a team to arrest Warren Kavanaugh and begin impeachment proceedings against Judge Franklin Oberlin. Novak sat back in his chair, rubbed his face with both hands. You're insane. Probably. They're going to kill you. They're going to try. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was not a happy sound. 7 months. You sat in that courthouse for 7 months, taking their abuse, documenting their crimes, and none of them had any idea. That's the job. No. Novak shook his head. That's not just a job. I don't know what that is. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the courthouse across the street. I've been practicing law for 18 years, he said quietly. I've watched good people go to prison because the system was rigged against them. I've filed motions I knew would be denied. I've made arguments to juries I knew wouldn't listen. He turned back to face her. I always told myself there was nothing I could do, that one person couldn't change anything. One person can't, Simone said. But 2 people can, and 3 people can do more than 2. Novak was silent for a long time. Then he sat back down. What do you need me to do? At 1:58 p.m., Angela Mendez was brought into courtroom 4B for sentencing. Simone was not there. She was still in the coffee shop, headphones in, laptop open, recording every word transmitted from the device in Oberlin's chambers. But Garrett Novak was there. He sat in the gallery, 3 rows back, exactly where Simone had sat for 7 months. He had a leather notebook in his lap and a pen in his hand. He was taking notes. Warren Kavanaugh stood at the prosecution table, his red tie gleaming under the courtroom lights. He was smiling. The people recommend a sentence of 5 years, Your Honor, Mrs. Mendez's crimes represent a serious breach of public trust, and the maximum sentence is warranted. Yolanda Baptiste stood at the defense table. Her voice was tired. Your Honor, my client has no prior criminal record. She has served her community as a nurse for 20 years. The evidence against her is circumstantial at best. We ask for leniency, probation, or at most a reduced sentence of denied. Oberlin did not let her finish. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 5 years in the Florida Department of Corrections. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Angela Mendez began to cry. Novak wrote in his notebook. Oberlin sentenced Mendez without hearing defense argument. Predetermined outcome. 2:04 p.m. It was the last entry he would make before the world changed. At 2:07 p.m., Simone made a phone call. "This is Special Agent Simone Halstead, badge number 7924, authorization code November 72 Delta Foxtrot. I'm activating emergency extraction protocol. Target location, Collier County Courthouse, courtroom 4B. Subjects, Judge Franklin Oberlin, ADA Warren Kavanaugh. Charges 18 U.S.C. Section 1346, Section 242, and Section 1512. Evidence secured. Request immediate federal team dispatch." The voice on the other end was calm, professional. "Acknowledged, Agent Halstead. Team en route. ETA 14 minutes. Hold position." "Negative. I'm going inside." A pause. "Agent Halstead, your orders were to—" "My orders were to gather evidence. The evidence is gathered. Now I'm going to make sure Kavanaugh doesn't walk out of that building before your team arrives." She ended the call, stood up, walked across the street toward the courthouse steps. The security checkpoint was chaos. Word had gotten out, somehow, somewhere, that something was happening. Deputies were running, radios were crackling. Tate Reddick was nowhere to be seen. Simone walked through the metal detector. No one stopped her. She took the elevator to the 4th floor, stepped out into the hallway outside courtroom 4B. Warren Kavanaugh was there. He was on his phone, his back to her, speaking in low, urgent tones. "I don't care how you do it. Just make sure she—" He turned, saw Simone, stopped mid-sentence. "You." Simone walked toward him, slowly, deliberately. "We need to talk, Mr. Kavanaugh. You're not supposed to be here. You're banned. I'll have you arrested for—" "For what?" Simone stopped 3 feet away. "For documenting your bribes to Judge Oberlin? For recording your conversations about Angela Mendez? For building a federal case that's going to end your career and put you in prison?" Kavanaugh's face drained of color. "You're bluffing. I'm FBI." She reached into her bag, pulled out the leather credential case, flipped it open. "Special Agent Simone Halstead, Public Corruption Unit, Miami Field Office. You're under investigation for honest services fraud, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and witness tampering. A federal team will be here in—" She checked her watch. 12 minutes. I suggest you start thinking about your cooperation options." Kavanaugh stared at the badge, at the photograph, at the FBI seal. Then he turned and ran. He made it approximately 15 feet. Tate Reddick stepped out of a side corridor, blocking his path. "Warren, what's going on?" "She's FBI. She's been FBI the whole time. We have to—" Reddick's eyes found Simone. Recognition. Rage. "You." "Me." Simone held her ground. "Mr. Reddick, I'm advising you to step aside. Interfering with a federal agent is a serious—" Reddick charged. He was fast for a big man, fast and angry and desperate. Simone sidestepped. He flew past her, caught himself on the wall, turned, charged again. This time she was ready. She dropped low, grabbed his outstretched arm, used his momentum against him. He flipped over her shoulder and landed hard on the marble floor. The wind went out of him. He lay there, gasping. "Stay down." Simone pressed her knee into his back, pulled his arms behind him, zip-tied his wrists with the restraints she'd been carrying since the first day of the operation. "You're under arrest for assault on a federal agent." She looked up. Kavanaugh was gone. The next 8 minutes were controlled chaos. Simone pursued Kavanaugh through the courthouse, downstairs, through hallways, past courtrooms full of startled attorneys and defendants. He knocked over a deputy, shoved a clerk out of his way, made it to the 1st floor before Simone cut him off at the main entrance. "It's over, Kavanaugh. There's nowhere to go." "You think you've won?" His face was red, his chest heaving. "You think this changes anything? I have friends. I have connections. The system will protect—" "The system is about to be dismantled." Simone heard sirens outside, blue lights flashing through the courthouse windows. "That's your future arriving, Mr. Kavanaugh. I suggest you face it with some dignity." The doors burst open. Federal agents, 8 of them, poured into the lobby. They were wearing tactical vests, carrying weapons, moving with the precision of people who had done this 1,000 times before. "Special Agent Halstead?" "That's me." She pointed at Kavanaugh. "ADA Warren Kavanaugh. Custody transfer authorized. Badge number 7924, authorization code November 72, Delta Foxtrot." 2 agents seized Kavanaugh by the arms. He did not resist. But as they led him away, he turned back to Simone. "This isn't over." His voice was quiet, cold. "You have no idea what you've started." Simone met his gaze. "Yes, I do." Judge Franklin Oberlin was arrested in his chambers 20 minutes later. He did not resist. He did not protest. He simply sat behind his desk, hands folded, as federal agents read him his rights and placed him in handcuffs. As he was led past Simone in the hallway, he stopped. 7 months, he said quietly. "You sat in my courtroom for 7 months." "I did." "And I never suspected, not once." "That was the point." He nodded slowly. Something like respect flickered in his eyes, and then was gone. "You're good," he said. "But this is bigger than you know, bigger than Kavanaugh, bigger than me." He was led away before Simone could respond, but his words stayed with her. "Bigger than you know." Later, hours later, Simone sat alone in a conference room at the FBI field office in Fort Myers. The table in front of her was covered with documents, transcripts, photographs, evidence markers, 7 months of work reduced to paper and timestamps. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. A single sentence. Oberlin was right. "This is just the beginning. Check Jacksonville. Check Tallahassee. No signature. No sender ID." Simone stared at the message for a long time.
Then she opened her laptop, started a new folder, named it Operation Courthouse 2.0. Outside the window, the Florida sun was setting over Fort Myers, red and gold and purple, bleeding into the Gulf of Mexico. It was beautiful. It was ending. And somewhere out there, in Jacksonville, in Tallahassee, in courthouses she had never seen, the corruption continued. She had won this battle. The war was just beginning. Word count, approximately 12,500. Viết tiếp phần 2 khoảng 12.000 từ 0027. Lập kế hoạch tiếp tục câu chuyện với cấu trúc chi tiết. The user wants me to continue writing part 2 of the story, approximately 12,000 words. I need to follow the established outline and continue from where part 1 ended.
Looking at the outline, part 1 covered Hook through approximately the first major reveal and arrest. Part 2 should cover the aftermath, the DOJ hearing/showdown, the resolution, and the open ending. Based on the outline structure, Part 5, midpoint receipts, approximately 2,200 words. Some of this was covered. Part 6, reveal plus showdown, approximately 4,200 words. The reveal happened, but the formal DOJ hearing needs to happen. Part 7, Kep Mo, approximately 1,800 words. The resolution and stinger. Wait, looking at Part 1, it seems like it jumped ahead quite a bit. The reveal happened at the end of Part 1, with Kavanaugh and Oberlin being arrested. For Part 2, I need to 1. Cover the formal legal proceedings. The DOJ hearing, evidence presentation 2. Show the institutional response and partial accountability 3. Cover the outcomes for various characters, Marcus Delroy appeal, Angela Mendez, etc. 4. End with the open threads and stinger about Jacksonville. I should follow the same formatting rules. No character name. Format for dialogue. Attribution after dialogue through action/reaction. Maintain tension throughout. Include 3 CT as, third person, continuous prose. No chapters or section breaks with dashes. 80 to 92% narration, 8 to 20% dialogue. Let me write Part 2, continuing from where Part 1 ended, covering 1. Immediate aftermath of arrests. 2. The formal DOJ hearing/evidence presentation. 3. Legal proceedings and outcomes. 4. Character resolutions, partial justice. 5. Open threads and stinger. I need to add 3 to 5 physical action scenes, confrontations, violence, etc., spread throughout as per the instructions. Show more. Done prosecutor mocked black woman in court. Then she revealed she is an undercover FBI agent, fan high. The fluorescent lights in the FBI field office hummed with the kind of relentless consistency that made time feel meaningless. Simone had been in the conference room for 6 hours. The coffee in front of her had gone cold 3 times. The stack of documents on the table had grown to 17 inches. And the questions from the DOJ attorney across from her showed no signs of stopping. Walk me through the recording from March 8th again. Assistant U.S. Attorney Denise Whitmore was a woman in her late 40s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. She had flown in from Washington 4 hours after Kavanaugh's arrest, and she had been dissecting Simone's evidence ever since. Timestamp 5:47 p.m. Simone's voice was steady, despite the exhaustion pulling at her edges. Judge Oberlin is in his chambers. A second individual enters, voice later identified as A.D., a Warren Kavanaugh through voice print analysis. They discuss the Mendez case. Oberlin requests payment confirmation. Kavanaugh confirms $20,000 to an account in Georgetown, Grand Cayman. And the chain of custody on this recording? The device was planted on February 1st under Title III, Warrant Number 2023-SW-1847, authorized by Magistrate Judge Patricia Ruiz. All recordings were transmitted to a secure FBI server in real time. I did not have direct access to the files. They were monitored and cataloged by the Technical Surveillance Unit in Quantico. Whitmore made a note. Her pen moved in sharp, precise strokes. The defense will argue entrapment. They can argue whatever they want. I never initiated contact with either subject regarding illegal activity. I never suggested, encouraged, or facilitated any criminal conduct. I simply documented what was already happening. For 7 months. For 7 months. Whitmore set down her pen, looked at Simone for a long moment. Agent Halstead, I've been prosecuting public corruption cases for 19 years. I've seen operations that took 3 years to build. I've seen cases that collapsed because one agent got impatient or sloppy or emotional. She leaned back in her chair. What you've assembled here is one of the most comprehensive evidence packages I've ever reviewed. 47 documented cases, 153 audio files, financial records linking judicial decisions to offshore payments. Simone waited. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Go ahead. Are you okay? The question caught Simone off guard. For 7 months, no one had asked her that. Not her handler, not her colleagues, not the anonymous voices on the other end of encrypted messages. I'm fine. You were assaulted by a courthouse bailiff. You had your tires slashed. You were banned from a courtroom on fabricated charges. You spent 212 days being called incompetent, being mocked, being treated like you didn't belong. Whitmore's voice softened slightly. That takes a toll, even on the best agents. Simone thought about Marcus Delroy, about Angela Mendez, about the 47 faces in her files, people whose lives had been destroyed while she watched and documented and did nothing to stop it. I'll be fine, she said, when they're convicted. Whitmore nodded slowly. Then let's make sure that happens. The next 72 hours were a blur of depositions, evidence reviews, and strategy sessions. Simone learned that Tate Reddick had been released on bail, $50,000, posted by an anonymous source. He was confined to Collier County pending trial, his passport seized, his employment terminated. She learned that Claudette Mays had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into evidence tampering and discriminatory conduct. She learned that Warren Kavanaugh had retained Martin Shaw, one of the most expensive defense attorneys in South Florida, and was preparing to fight every charge with every resource at his disposal. And she learned that Judge Franklin Oberlin, in a move that surprised no one who understood how the system protected its own, had been granted house arrest pending trial due to health concerns and his distinguished record of public service. The system was already trying to save itself. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button right now, because the courtroom showdown you're about to witness will leave you speechless. 1 week after the arrests, Simone received a phone call she had been dreading. "Agent Halstead, this is Yolanda Baptiste." Simone was in her apartment. The same beige apartment, the same beige walls, though now there were 2 photographs on the nightstand: her parents and her graduating class at Quantico. "Ms. Baptiste, I've been meaning to call you." "I'm sure you have." Yolanda's voice was flat, controlled, the voice of a woman who had spent 7 days processing a betrayal she still did not fully understand. "I have some questions. I'll answer what I can. Did you ever actually work as a paralegal before this?" "No. I went through a 6-week training program to learn the basics, enough to pass as one." "So when you organized my files, when you helped me prepare motions, when you sat in that courtroom and watched my clients get convicted, I was doing my job." Silence on the line, long and heavy. "Your job," Yolanda laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Your job was to watch innocent people go to prison. My job was to build a case that would stop it from happening to anyone else. And how many people went to prison while you were building that case? How many Marcus Delroys? How many Angela Mendezes?" Simone closed her eyes. 47. 47. The word hung in the air like an accusation. 47 people whose lives were destroyed while you took notes. If I had intervened earlier, Kavanaugh and Oberlin would have covered their tracks. They would have destroyed evidence. They would have found new ways to continue. The corruption would have survived, and it would have claimed hundreds more victims over the next decade. So you made a calculation. 47 lives sacrificed so you could save, what, 1,000? 10,000? Something like that. And you can live with that? Simone opened her eyes, looked at the photograph of her parents on the nightstand. "I have to." More silence. Then Yolanda's voice, softer now. "Marcus Delroy's appeal was filed yesterday. His new attorney is using your evidence to argue ineffective assistance of counsel and judicial misconduct. There's a real chance he could be released." "I know. I've been tracking the filing." "You have?" "I track all of them. All 47. Simone paused. "I know their names, their case numbers, their sentencing dates. I know which ones have appeals pending and which ones have already served their time. I know which ones have families waiting for them and which ones have no one." "Why?" "Because they deserve to be remembered, because what happened to them was wrong, and because when I testify at Kavanaugh's trial, I want to be able to look at the jury and tell them exactly who suffered and exactly why it matters." Yolanda was quiet for a long time. "You're not what I expected," she finally said. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone colder, maybe. Someone who saw this as just another case." A pause. "You actually care, don't you? About the people who got hurt?" "I care about all of them. That's why I did this." "Even though caring makes it harder?" "Especially because caring makes it harder." Simone looked out the window at the Florida sky. "The day I stop caring is the day I need to find a different job." The emergency DOJ hearing was scheduled for March 25th, 12 days after the arrests. It was not a trial. It was a preliminary proceeding to determine whether there was sufficient evidence to move forward with federal charges against Warren Kavanaugh and to recommend impeachment proceedings against Judge Franklin Oberlin to the Florida Judicial Qualifications Commission. The hearing would take place in the federal courthouse in Tampa, neutral ground, far from Collier County and its compromised institutions. Simone spent the days leading up to it reviewing her testimony, organizing her evidence, and trying not to think about what would happen if something went wrong. The night before the hearing, she received a visitor. Garrett Novak knocked on her apartment door at 8:47 p.m. She checked the peephole, opened the door. "How did you find my address?" "I'm a defense attorney. Finding information is what I do." He held up a bottle of wine. "I thought you might need this." "I don't drink before testimony." "Then consider it a gift for after." He stepped inside without being invited, looked around at the sparse furnishings. Cozy. It's temporary. Everything is temporary. He set the wine on the kitchen counter, turned to face her. "I wanted to talk to you before tomorrow." "About what?" "About what happens next." Novak leaned against the counter. "Kavanaugh's attorney is good. Really good. He's going to try to destroy your credibility. He's going to argue that you manipulated evidence, that you entrapped his client, that you're a rogue agent pursuing a personal vendetta." "I know." "Do you also know that he's been digging into your background, your family, your education, your previous assignments?" Simone's expression did not change. "Let him dig. He won't find anything." "He doesn't need to find anything real. He just needs to create doubt." Novak's voice was serious. "I've seen it happen before. Good cases destroyed because a defense attorney convinced a jury that the investigator couldn't be trusted." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've decided to testify." Novak met her eyes. "Not just about what I saw in the courthouse. About everything. About the 2 years I spent watching Oberlin and Kavanaugh operate. About the cases I lost because the system was rigged. About the clients I couldn't save." "That's a significant risk for you." "I know. The Florida bar doesn't look kindly on attorneys who testify against judges and prosecutors. My career in Collier County is probably over." He shrugged. "But I've spent 18 years playing by rules that were designed to protect the people breaking them. I'm tired of losing." Simone studied him for a long moment. "Why now? Why not 2 years ago, when you first suspected something was wrong?" "Because 2 years ago I didn't have proof. I had suspicions. I had patterns. But I didn't have recordings of judges discussing bribes." He smiled grimly. "You gave me something I never had before. You gave me hope that the truth might actually matter." "The truth always matters." "No, it doesn't. Not in a courtroom. In a courtroom, what matters is what you can prove." He pushed off from the counter. "Tomorrow, we prove everything." The morning of March 25th dawned gray and humid. Simone arrived at the federal courthouse in Tampa at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before the hearing was scheduled to begin. She was wearing a black suit, her FBI credentials displayed on a lanyard around her neck, her hair pulled back in a style that was professional without being severe. She felt calm, focused, ready. The hearing room was on the 4th floor, a wood-paneled chamber with seating for 50 observers, a raised bench for the presiding officials, and separate tables for the prosecution and defense. AUSA Denise Whitmore was already there, reviewing notes with 2 junior attorneys. She looked up when Simone entered. "Agent Halstead, how are you feeling?" "Ready." "Good, because Shaw is going to come at you hard. He filed a motion last night to exclude half your recordings on Fourth Amendment grounds." "The warrant was valid." "I know, but he's going to argue scope limitations, that the warrant authorized surveillance of Oberlin's chambers, but not recordings of conversations with third parties like Kavanaugh. Title III authorizes recording of any party to a conversation when the surveillance target is present and the conversation relates to the criminal activity under investigation." Whitmore smiled slightly. "You've done your homework." "I've had 7 months to prepare." At 9:15 a.m., the hearing began. The panel consisted of 3 officials, a representative from the DOJ Civil Rights Division, a designee from the Florida Attorney General's office, and a retired federal judge serving as an independent arbiter. Warren Kavanaugh sat at the defense table with Martin Shaw. He was wearing a gray suit and a blue tie. A deliberate choice, Simone noted, designed to make him look trustworthy and professional. His face showed no emotion. Judge Franklin Oberlin was not present. His attorney had filed a motion to separate his proceedings, arguing that his client's health made travel inadvisable. The motion had been granted. Simone sat in the front row of the gallery, waiting to be called. This hearing will come to order. The DOJ representative, a man named Harold Vance, spoke into the microphone. We are here to review evidence in the matter of United States versus Warren Kavanaugh and to determine whether sufficient grounds exist for federal prosecution. Ms. Whitmore, you may proceed with your opening statement. Whitmore stood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sure. The evidence we will present today documents a 7-month pattern of judicial corruption involving ADA Warren Kavanaugh and Judge Franklin Oberlin of Collier County. This corruption took the form of bribery, cash payments in exchange for favorable rulings, and resulted in the wrongful conviction of at least 47 defendants, primarily Black and Latino individuals, targeted for prosecution based on their race and economic vulnerability. She paused. Let the words settle. We will present authenticated recordings of conversations between the subjects discussing specific payments tied to specific cases. We will present financial records showing transfers to offshore accounts coinciding with sentencing decisions. We will present testimony from a 7-month undercover operation conducted by Special Agent Simone Halstead of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. Martin Shaw rose. Objection. The recordings Ms. Whitmore references were obtained through a surveillance operation of questionable legality. We move to exclude all recordings on Fourth Amendment grounds. The objection is noted and will be addressed during evidentiary arguments. Vance turned to Whitmore. Continue. Whitmore nodded. The evidence will show that Warren Kavanaugh and Franklin Oberlin operated a criminal enterprise within the Collier County justice system, an enterprise that destroyed lives, violated constitutional rights, and corrupted the very institutions designed to protect the innocent. We ask that this panel find sufficient cause for federal prosecution under 18 U.S.C. Section 1346, honest services fraud, and 18 U.S.C. Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. She sat down. Vance turned to the defense table. Mr. Shaw, your opening statement. Martin Shaw rose slowly. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind of measured confidence that came from decades of winning cases that should have been unwinnable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My client, Warren Kavanaugh, has served the people of Collier County with distinction for 23 years. He has prosecuted thousands of cases. He has put dangerous criminals behind bars. He has dedicated his life to public service. He paused. What the government is presenting today is not evidence of corruption. It is the product of an overzealous federal agent who spent 7 months manipulating circumstances, manufacturing evidence, and pursuing a personal vendetta against a prosecutor who refused to bow to outside pressure. Simone's expression did not change, but she felt the words land like blows. We will demonstrate that the recordings presented by the government were obtained through an improperly scoped warrant. We will demonstrate that Agent Halstead engaged in conduct that crossed the line from investigation into entrapment. And we will demonstrate that the so-called pattern of judicial misconduct is nothing more than the ordinary operation of a busy court system, reinterpreted through the lens of an agent determined to find wrongdoing, whether it existed or not. He sat down. Vance made a note. We will now hear evidentiary arguments regarding the admissibility of the surveillance recordings. Mr. Shaw, you may proceed with your motion. The legal argument lasted 2 hours. Shaw was good. Novak had been right about that. He dissected the warrant application line by line, arguing that the surveillance had been authorized to investigate potential judicial misconduct by Oberlin alone, not to capture conversations with other parties like Kavanaugh. Whitmore countered that Title III warrants inherently authorize recording of all parties to conversations with the surveillance target when those conversations pertain to the criminal activity under investigation. Shaw argued that Kavanaugh had a reasonable expectation of privacy in conversations with a judge in chambers. Whitmore argued that there is no reasonable expectation of privacy when discussing the commission of federal crimes. Back and forth. Point and counterpoint. Finally, the panel retired to deliberate. 37 minutes later, they returned. The panel has reviewed the arguments regarding the admissibility of surveillance recordings, Vance announced. We find that Title III Warrant Number 2023-SW-1847 was properly issued, and that its scope reasonably encompassed recordings of conversations between Judge Oberlin and any party discussing matters related to the criminal activity under investigation. The motion to exclude is denied. The recordings are admissible. Shaw's jaw tightened. Kavanaugh's face remained expressionless. But Simone saw the shift in his eyes, the first flicker of fear. The government calls Special Agent Simone Halstead. Simone rose, walked to the witness stand, raised her right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. She sat down. Whitmore approached. Agent Halstead, please state your name, position, and credentials for the record. Simone Renee Halstead, Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation, badge number 7924, assigned to the Public Corruption Unit, Miami Field Office. I have been with the Bureau for 8 years, with specialized training in undercover operations and financial crimes investigation. And can you describe your assignment in Collier County? Beginning August 15, 2023, I was assigned to investigate allegations of judicial corruption in the Collier County court system. I operated undercover as a paralegal assistant in the Office of Public Defender Yolanda Baptiste. My objectives were to document patterns of misconduct, identify participants in any corrupt schemes, and gather evidence sufficient for federal prosecution. How long did this assignment last? 7 months and 12 days. During that time, what did you observe? Simone took a breath. I observed a systematic pattern of judicial misconduct centered on Judge Franklin Oberlin and facilitated by ADA Warren Kavanaugh. This pattern included denial of legitimate defense motions without legal justification, exclusion of exculpatory evidence on pretextual grounds, racially discriminatory treatment of defendants and defense counsel, and coordination between bench and prosecution to predetermine case outcomes. Can you give us specific examples? On February 28, 2024, I observed Judge Oberlin deny a motion to suppress evidence in State v. Webb without providing any legal reasoning. The motion was based on a Fourth Amendment violation, an illegal vehicle search, that should have resulted in exclusion of the evidence. The defendant was convicted and sentenced to 3 years. Did you document this incident? I did. I documented 47 similar incidents over the course of my assignment. Whitmore turned to the panel. At this time, I would like to introduce Government Exhibit 1, a summary of the 47 cases documented by Agent Halstead, including defendant names, case numbers, dates, and descriptions of the alleged misconduct. The exhibit was admitted. Agent Halstead, did you also gather evidence of financial transactions connected to these judicial decisions? I did. Through a combination of FOIA requests, subpoenaed financial records, and surveillance recordings, I documented 6 instances of payments to an offshore account in Grand Cayman that correlated with specific sentencing decisions by Judge Oberlin. Can you describe the connection between these payments and the defendant Warren Kavanaugh? Yes. On March 8, 2024, a recording device authorized under Title III Warrant 2023-SW-1847 captured a conversation between Judge Oberlin and ADA Kavanaugh in which they discussed payment for the Mendez case. Kavanaugh confirmed a $20,000 transfer to Judge Oberlin's offshore account in exchange for a 5-year sentence. Whitmore nodded. At this time, I would like to play Government Exhibit 7, the recording from March 8, 2024. The room went silent as the audio played. Oberlin's voice. The Mendez case, I need a guarantee. Kavanaugh's voice. You'll get your guarantee. She goes down for the full 5 years. No early release, no reduced charges. And my payment? Same as always. The Cayman account. We'll do 15 this time. It's a bigger case. 15,000? For a 5-year sentence? That's 3,000 a year. I want 20. Silence. Then Kavanaugh. Fine, 20. But she takes the plea. No trial. I'll make sure of it. The recording ended. The room remained silent for a long moment. Vance looked at Kavanaugh. The prosecutor's face had gone pale. Mr. Shaw, do you wish to cross-examine the witness? Shaw stood slowly. I do. Mom. This is where everything changes. If you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. You don't want to miss what happens next. Martin Shaw approached the witness stand like a predator circling prey. Agent Halstead, you testified that you spent 7 months undercover in the Collier County Courthouse. That's correct. During that time, you posed as a paralegal. You interacted with attorneys, judges, court staff. You pretended to be someone you were not. That is the nature of undercover work. So you're comfortable with deception. Whitmore rose. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Vance looked at Shaw. Rephrase. Shaw nodded. Agent Halstead, in your 7 months undercover, did you ever engage in conduct that could be characterized as manipulative or dishonest? I maintained a cover identity. That required certain deceptions about my background and qualifications. Did you lie to Yolanda Baptiste about your credentials? I provided her with documentation that indicated I was a certified paralegal. That documentation was created by the FBI as part of my cover. So you lied. I maintained operational security. Shaw smiled. Let's talk about the recordings. You testified that they were authorized under a Title III warrant. But that warrant was issued to investigate Judge Oberlin, not my client. The warrant authorized surveillance of Judge Oberlin's chambers and any conversations therein relating to the suspected criminal activity. But my client was not named in the warrant application, was he? No. So, when you recorded his conversations, you were acting outside the scope of your authorization. I was recording conversations that took place in the location specified by the warrant, involving the subject specified by the warrant, discussing the criminal activity specified by the warrant. The presence of additional participants does not invalidate the recording. That's your interpretation. That's the law. Shaw's eyes narrowed. Agent Halstead, during your time undercover, did you ever take any action that could have prevented harm to the defendants whose cases you documented? Simone paused. Could you clarify the question? It's a simple question. You watched 47 people get convicted. Many of them, by your account, wrongfully. Did you ever intervene to prevent those convictions? No. Why not? Because intervening would have compromised the investigation. It would have alerted the subjects to FBI interest. It would have allowed them to destroy evidence and continue their activities. So you made a choice. Shaw's voice hardened. You chose to let innocent people go to prison so that you could build your case. I chose to pursue the greatest good for the greatest number. The greatest good. Shaw laughed. Tell that to Marcus Delroy. Tell that to Angela Mendez. Tell that to the 47 people whose lives you watched get destroyed while you took notes. Whitmore rose. Objection. Counsel is testifying. Sustained. But the damage was done. Simone could feel the shift in the room, the doubt creeping in at the edges. Shaw pressed on. Agent Halstead, is it true that you were physically assaulted by courthouse bailiff Tate Reddick during your assignment? Yes. And is it true that you did not report this assault through official channels until after your cover was blown? I reported it to my handler through secure communications. But not to local law enforcement. Local law enforcement was potentially compromised. Potentially. Shaw nodded. So you made another choice. You chose to assume corruption rather than follow standard reporting procedures. I chose to protect the investigation. or you chose to protect yourself. Shaw turned to the panel. Members of the panel, what we're seeing here is not a careful, methodical investigation. It's a rogue operation conducted by an agent who made unilateral decisions about who to trust, what to report, and how to interpret ambiguous evidence. Agent Halstead saw corruption everywhere because she was looking for it. She found what she expected to find, and she ignored anything that didn't fit her narrative. Whitmore rose again. Objection. Counsel is making closing arguments during cross-examination. Sustained. Mr. Shaw, do you have further questions for this witness? Shaw looked at Simone. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or frustration. No further questions. The hearing recessed for lunch at 12:30 p.m. Simone sat alone in a small conference room adjacent to the hearing chamber. She had not eaten. She was not hungry. The door opened. Whitmore entered. That was rough. I've had rougher. Shaw is good. He's planting seeds of doubt. Whitmore sat down across from her. But the recordings are devastating. No matter what he argues about your methods, those recordings speak for themselves. Will it be enough? For federal charges against Kavanaugh? Almost certainly. For Oberlin's impeachment? The JQC will have to weigh the evidence against his 14 years on the bench. It could go either way. Simone looked out the window. What about the 47? The ones who were wrongfully convicted? Whitmore sighed. Some will get new trials. Some will have their sentences reduced. Some will be released outright. But it will take time. Years, in some cases. Years. That's how the system works. Slowly. Imperfectly. Whitmore paused. But it does work. Eventually. Eventually isn't good enough. It's what we have. Whitmore stood. The afternoon session starts in 30 minutes. Garrett Novak is scheduled to testify. After that, we present the financial evidence, and then the panel deliberates. How long? Could be hours, could be days. She walked to the door. Get some rest if you can. This isn't over yet. Garrett Novak took the stand at 1:45 p.m. He looked different than he had in the Collier County Courthouse. More confident, more determined, like a man who had finally decided to stop pretending. Whitmore guided him through his background. 18 years as a defense attorney, hundreds of cases before Judge Oberlin, a growing awareness that something was wrong in courtroom 4B. Mr. Novak, can you describe what first raised your suspicions about Judge Oberlin's conduct? It was about 2 years ago. I had a client, a young black man charged with burglary. The evidence was thin. The police report had inconsistencies. I filed a motion to suppress the primary evidence, a confession that I believed was coerced. What happened? Judge Oberlin denied the motion without explanation. My client was convicted and sentenced to 8 years. Was that unusual? Not in itself. Motions get denied all the time. But over the next several months, I started noticing a pattern. Every motion I filed in Oberlin's courtroom was denied. Every objection overruled. Every request for leniency rejected. Did you observe this pattern with other defense attorneys? Yes, particularly with public defenders like Yolanda Baptiste, and particularly with defendants who were black or Latino. Shaw rose. Objection. The witness is speculating about racial motivation. I'll rephrase. Whitmore turned back to Novak. Did you observe any correlation between the race of defendants and the outcomes of their cases in Judge Oberlin's courtroom? I did. I kept records. Over 2 years, defendants who were black or Latino received sentences averaging 47% higher than white defendants for comparable offenses. Did you report these observations to anyone? I tried. I spoke to the Florida Bar's Judicial Ethics Committee. I filed a complaint with the Collier County Administrative Office. Nothing happened. The complaints were dismissed as unsubstantiated. And then? And then Agent Halstead arrived. Novak looked at Simone. I didn't know who she was at first. I just knew she was different. She watched everything. She wrote everything down. She asked questions that no paralegal would think to ask. Did you confront her about your suspicions? Eventually. A few days before the arrests, I told her that I knew she wasn't who she claimed to be. She didn't confirm or deny it, but she asked me to trust her. Did you? Novak paused. I've spent 18 years not trusting anyone, not trusting the system, not trusting that the truth would matter. He looked at the panel. For the first time in my career, I decided to take a chance. I decided to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone was finally going to do something about what I'd been watching for years. And were you right? I'm sitting here, aren't I? Novak almost smiled. So I guess we'll find out. The financial evidence was presented over the course of 2 hours. An FBI forensic accountant named Dr. Patricia Huang walked the panel through the money trail. 6 transfers to an account in Grand Cayman, totaling $94,000 over 3 years. Each transfer correlated with a major sentencing decision in Judge Oberlin's courtroom. The account was registered to a shell company that traced back to a trust controlled by Oberlin's wife. Shaw objected to nearly every piece of evidence. He argued that the financial records had been obtained improperly, that the correlations were coincidental, that the shell company structure was a legitimate tax strategy with no criminal intent. The panel admitted the evidence over his objections. By 4:30 p.m., the presentation was complete. Vance looked at the assembled attorneys. We will now recess for deliberation. This panel will reconvene at 9 a.m. tomorrow to announce our findings. Court is adjourned. That night, Simone did not sleep. She sat in her hotel room in Tampa, laptop open, reviewing everything. The recordings, the financial documents, the 47 case summaries, the testimony transcripts, looking for weaknesses, looking for gaps, looking for anything Shaw might exploit. At 2:17 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Agent Halstead. The voice was electronically distorted, unrecognizable. You should have stayed out of this. Who is this? Someone who knows things you don't. Things about Jacksonville. Things about Tallahassee. Things about how deep this goes. Simone's grip tightened on the phone. If you have information, come forward. Testify. I can't testify. I'm already dead if they find out I made this call. A pause. But I can tell you this. Oberlin and Kavanaugh are small fish. The people who paid them, the people who built this system, they're still out there. And they're watching you. Who are they? Look for the Whitfield Group. Look for connections to the private prison industry. Look for... The line went dead. Simone stared at the phone for a long time. Then she opened a new document on her laptop. Typed, Whitfield Group, Private Prison Connections, Jacksonville, Tallahassee. The investigation was not over. It was just beginning. At 9 a.m. the following morning, the panel reconvened. The hearing room was packed. Word had spread overnight. Reporters, attorneys, courthouse employees, all crammed into the gallery to witness the announcement. Simone sat in the front row. Whitmore was at the prosecution table. Shaw and Kavanaugh at the defense table. Kavanaugh looked like he hadn't slept either. His face was gray, his eyes hollow. The confidence that had carried him through 23 years of prosecution was gone. Vance called the room to order. This panel has reviewed the evidence presented in the matter of United States versus Warren Kavanaugh. We have deliberated carefully and reached the following conclusions. He paused. The room held its breath. First, regarding the surveillance recordings, we find that these recordings were lawfully obtained under Title III Warrant 2023-SW-1847 and are admissible as evidence in any subsequent proceedings. Shaw's jaw tightened. Second, regarding the pattern of judicial misconduct, we find substantial evidence that Judge Franklin Oberlin engaged in a systematic pattern of biased rulings, denial of legitimate defense motions, and discriminatory treatment of defendants based on race and economic status. We recommend that the Florida Judicial Qualifications Commission initiate formal impeachment proceedings. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Third, and most significantly regarding the defendant Warren Kavanaugh, we find probable cause to believe that Warren Kavanaugh engaged in honest services fraud in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 1346, deprivation of rights under color of law in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 242, and conspiracy to obstruct justice in violation of 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 1512. Kavanaugh's head dropped. Based on these findings, this panel recommends that the matter be referred to a federal grand jury for indictment. The defendant's bail status will be reviewed by the appropriate magistrate. Vance looked at Kavanaugh. Mr. Kavanaugh, you are hereby remanded to federal custody pending your bail hearing. This proceeding is adjourned. Two federal marshals approached the defense table. Shaw leaned close to Kavanaugh, whispering urgently. Kavanaugh stood, placed his hands behind his back. As the marshals led him from the room, he passed Simone's row. He stopped. You think you've won something. His voice was barely audible. But you haven't. You've just shown them that the system can be challenged. They'll adapt. They'll find new ways. And people like you will never be able to stop them. Maybe not. Simone met his gaze. But I stopped you. Kavanaugh was led away. The gallery erupted. The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks like dominoes falling in slow motion. Warren Kavanaugh was indicted by a federal grand jury on all charges. His trial was scheduled for September, 6 months away. Martin Shaw filed motion after motion, but the evidence was overwhelming. Legal analysts predicted conviction. Judge Franklin Oberlin was formally impeached by the Florida Judicial Qualifications Commission. His law license was suspended pending the outcome of his criminal case. He remained under house arrest, his distinguished career reduced to waiting and watching, and wondering how it had all fallen apart. Tate Reddick pleaded guilty to assault and intimidation charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. He received 18 months in county jail and was permanently barred from law enforcement employment. Claudette Mays was terminated from her position following an internal investigation that documented 17 instances of discriminatory conduct and evidence tampering. She filed a wrongful termination lawsuit. It was dismissed. And the 47? Their cases were reviewed one by one. Marcus Delroy was released after 14 months when a federal judge vacated his conviction based on judicial misconduct. He walked out of prison on a Thursday afternoon, blinking in the sunlight, unable to believe he was free. Angela Mendez's conviction was overturned. She received a formal apology from the Collier County District Attorney's Office, a new DA appointed after Kavanaugh's arrest, and a settlement of $300,000 for wrongful prosecution. 23 other defendants had their sentences reduced or their convictions vacated. 14 cases remained under review. 10 defendants had already served their full sentences. For them, there was no remedy, only the cold comfort of knowing that the people who had destroyed their lives would finally face consequences. 3 months after the DOJ hearing, Simone received a letter. It was handwritten on plain paper, mailed from an address in Fort Myers. Agent Halstead, I don't know if you remember me. My name is Marcus Delroy. You sat in the courtroom the day they convicted me. You watched them take me away in handcuffs. At the time, I hated you. I hated everyone in that room. I thought the whole system was designed to destroy people like me, and everyone who worked in it was complicit. I know now that I was wrong about you. My lawyer told me what you did, how you spent 7 months documenting everything, how you watched people get convicted and couldn't do anything to stop it, how you had to choose between saving a few people and saving many. I don't know if I could have made that choice. I don't know if I could have sat there, day after day, watching innocent people get destroyed and kept my mouth shut. But I know that because you did, I'm free now. And so are a lot of other people who would still be in prison if you hadn't done what you did. I don't know how to thank you for that. I don't even know if thank you is the right thing to say. What you did was hard. What you did cost you something. I can see that in the pictures they showed on the news. You look tired. You look like someone who's been carrying a weight for a long time. So I won't say thank you. I'll just say this. What you did mattered. To me, to my family, to everyone who was hurt by those people. And if you ever need anything, anything at all, you know where to find me. Marcus Delroy. Simone read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, and placed it in the drawer of her nightstand, next to the photograph of her parents and the graduation picture from Quantico. The call from SSA. Marcus Terrell came on a Tuesday afternoon. "Halstead, we need to talk." Simone was in her apartment. Still the same apartment, still the same beige walls, though now there were more photographs, more signs of a life being slowly rebuilt. "I'm listening." "The anonymous tip you received during the Tampa hearing, the one about the Whitfield group." "What about it?" "We've been investigating, quietly, off the books." A pause. "You were right. Oberlin and Kavanaugh were small fish. The Whitfield Group is a private equity firm with investments in 3 private prison companies. They've been funneling money to judges and prosecutors across Florida for at least a decade." "How many jurisdictions?" "At least 7. Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Orlando, Tampa, and 3 smaller counties we're still mapping." Simone closed her eyes. "How many victims?" "We don't have a final count, but preliminary estimates suggest hundreds, maybe thousands." Hundreds, thousands. People whose lives had been destroyed by a system designed to profit from their incarceration. "What do you need from me?" "We're putting together a task force, multi-agency, FBI, DOJ, Florida AG. We need someone who knows how these operations work, someone who's been inside." "You want me to go undercover again?" "Not necessarily undercover, but we need your expertise, your documentation skills, your ability to see patterns that other people miss." Simone opened her eyes, looked at the letter from Marcus Delroy still sitting on her nightstand. "What you did mattered." "When do I start?" "Yesterday." Terrell's voice held something that might have been a smile. "Welcome to Operation Whitfield." 6 months later, Warren Kavanaugh stood trial in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Florida. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Simone testified for 2 days. She presented her evidence methodically, carefully, answering every question from both prosecution and defense with the same steady composure she had maintained throughout the DOJ hearing. Shaw tried every trick in his considerable arsenal. He attacked her credibility. He questioned her methods. He suggested that she had manufactured evidence, manipulated witnesses, and pursued a personal vendetta against his client. The jury did not believe him. On the 18th day of trial, they returned a verdict, guilty on all counts. Warren Kavanaugh was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. He was disbarred. His pension was forfeit. His legacy, 23 years of public service, thousands of cases, a 97% conviction rate, was reduced to a single word: corrupt. As he was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, he passed Simone one final time. He did not speak, did not meet her eyes. He simply walked past, a broken man on his way to a cell. Simone watched him go. Then she gathered her files, nodded to Whitmore, and walked out of the courthouse into the Florida sunshine. Judge Franklin Oberlin never stood trial. 3 weeks before his scheduled court date, he was found unresponsive in his home. A heart attack, according to the medical examiner. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Some called it justice. Some called it escape. Simone called it neither. She simply noted it in her files and moved on. There was too much work to do to dwell on the fate of one corrupt judge. The Whitfield Group was still out there. 7 jurisdictions, hundreds of victims, thousands of lives destroyed. And Simone Halstead was just getting started. 1 year after the Collier County arrests, Simone sat in a conference room in the FBI field office in Jacksonville. The table in front of her was covered with photographs, documents, financial records. A map of Florida hung on the wall, dotted with red pins marking locations of suspected corruption. There were 23 pins. She had added 7 in the past month alone. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. "They know about Jacksonville. Be careful. No signature. No sender ID." Simone stared at the message for a long moment. Then she deleted it. turned back to the map. 23 pins. 23 courthouses. 23 communities where justice had been corrupted, where lives had been destroyed, where the system had failed the people it was supposed to protect. She had brought down 2 of them, 21 to go. Her phone rang. She answered. Halstead. Agent Halstead, this is AUSA Whitmore. We have a development in the Tallahassee investigation. Can you come to Tampa tomorrow? What kind of development? The kind that changes everything. A pause. We found the source of the anonymous tips. We know who's been feeding you information. Simone's heart rate increased slightly. Who? I can't say over the phone, but I can tell you this. It's someone close. Someone who's been inside the Whitfield group for years, and they're ready to testify. I'll be there in the morning. She ended the call, looked at the map one more time. 21 pins. 21 battles still to fight. She gathered her files, turned off the lights, and walked out of the conference room. Outside, the Jacksonville sun was setting over the St. Johns River, red and gold and purple, bleeding into the water like a wound that would not heal. It was beautiful. It was ending. And somewhere out there, in Tallahassee, in Orlando, in courthouses she had never seen, the corruption continued. But so did she. That night, in her apartment in Jacksonville, Simone finally opened the letter from her mother. It had been sitting in her drawer for 8 months. 8 months of being too busy, too tired, too afraid of what it might say. She opened the envelope, unfolded the paper. My dearest Simone, your father and I saw you on the news. We saw you testifying at that hearing in Tampa. We saw the way you held yourself, calm, steady, strong. We saw the woman you've become. We're so proud of you. I know we don't say it enough. I know we don't understand half of what you do. But we know that you're making a difference. We know that you're fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. We know that the world is a little bit better because you're in it. Please come home when you can. Your father wants to show you the garden. He's been growing tomatoes, if you can believe it. And I want to make you dinner. Real dinner, not whatever you've been eating out of vending machines. We love you, sweetheart, more than words can say. Mom Simone read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and placed it next to the letter from Marcus Delroy. 2 letters. 2 people who believed in her. 2 reminders of why she did what she did. She closed the drawer, walked to the window, looked out at the Jacksonville skyline, lights glittering in the darkness, a city full of stories she had not yet heard, injustices she had not yet documented, lives she had not yet touched. The investigation was not over. It would never be over. But tonight, just for tonight, she allowed herself to feel something other than determination. She felt hope.
Epilogue. 3 years later, the Whitfield Group investigation resulted in the prosecution of 47 individuals across 12 Florida jurisdictions. 11 judges were impeached, 23 prosecutors were disbarred. 13 law enforcement officers were convicted of civil rights violations. The total number of wrongful convictions identified exceeded 4,000. Angela Mendez became an advocate for criminal justice reform. She testified before the Florida legislature in support of a bill requiring independent oversight of judicial conduct. The bill passed. Marcus Delroy founded a nonprofit organization providing support services to exonerees. He was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in 2028.
Yolanda Baptiste was appointed to a newly created position, Collier County Public Defender, Oversight Administrator. She spent the rest of her career ensuring that what happened in Courtroom 4B would never happen again. Garrett Novak became a federal prosecutor. He specialized in public corruption cases. His conviction rate was 94%. And Simone Halstead? She continued the work. In Jacksonville, in Tallahassee, in places across the country where justice was corrupted and lives were destroyed and the system failed the people it was supposed to protect. She never stopped. She never would. Because the work was never finished. because the corruption was never fully eradicated.
Because somewhere, in some courthouse, in some city, another innocent person was being convicted of a crime they didn't commit. Another judge was taking a bribe. Another prosecutor was destroying a life for profit. And Simone Halstead would be there, watching, documenting, waiting, ready to bring them down. 5 years after the Collier County arrests, Simone Halstead stood in a cemetery in Fort Myers, watching a casket being lowered into the ground. The headstone read, Warren James Kavanaugh, 1961 to 2029, beloved father. There were fewer than 20 people at the funeral. His ex-wife, who had divorced him 3 months after his conviction, his 2 adult children, who had not spoken to him since the trial,
a handful of former colleagues who had come out of obligation rather than grief. No one from the courthouse, no one from the prosecutor's office, no one who had worked alongside him for 23 years. Simone stood at the back of the small gathering, dressed in black, her face unreadable. She had not come to mourn. She had come to witness. Warren Kavanaugh had served 4 years of his 7-year sentence before being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He was released on compassionate grounds 6 months before his death, a mercy that he had never extended to the hundreds of people he had helped imprison. He died in a hospice facility in Naples, surrounded by nurses who did not know his name and family members who could not forgive what he had done. It was, Simone thought, a fitting end. Not justice. Justice would have been impossible. There was no punishment that could undo the years stolen from Marcus Delroy, the career destroyed for Angela Mendez, the families torn apart by wrongful convictions. But it was something. A reminder that actions have consequences, that the system, for all its flaws, could sometimes hold the powerful accountable. The priest finished his prayers. The mourners began to disperse. Simone turned to leave. A woman stepped into her path. Late 20s, with Kavanaugh's jawline and her mother's eyes. His daughter. You're the FBI agent. It was not a question. The one who destroyed my father. Simone met her gaze. I documented his crimes. He destroyed himself. He was a good man, before all this, or he coached my softball team. He helped me with my homework. Her voice cracked. He was my father. I'm sure he was. Then how could you do it? How could you spend 7 months pretending to be someone else, building a case that would take him away from us? Simone was silent for a long moment. Your father prosecuted a man named Marcus Delroy. He was 24 years old. He had a mother who loved him, just like your father loved you. He was innocent. Your father knew he was innocent, and your father sent him to prison anyway, for 15 years, because someone paid him to do it. The daughter's face went pale. Marcus Delroy lost 3 years of his life because of your father's choices. Angela Mendez lost her nursing license, her reputation, her savings. 47 people, 47 families, were torn apart so that your father could deposit $20,000 into an offshore account. Simone's voice was steady, without anger, without triumph. I'm sorry for your loss, I truly am. But I'm not sorry for what I did. Because somewhere out there are 47 other daughters and sons who got their parents back because your father is no longer in a position to destroy their lives. She walked past the daughter without another word, got into her car, drove away. In the rearview mirror, she saw the daughter standing alone by the grave, shoulders shaking with sobs. Simone did not feel guilty, but she did not feel victorious either. She felt tired, the kind of tired that settled into bones and refused to leave. 5 years of investigations, 5 years of trials, 5 years of watching the powerful fall and the innocent rise and the system grind slowly, imperfectly, towards something that might someday resemble justice. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was what she had. The Whitfield Group investigation had concluded 18 months earlier with a consent decree that required the company to divest from all private prison holdings and submit to federal oversight for a period of 10 years. No executives were criminally charged. The company paid a fine of $47 million, a fraction of the profits they had made from the corrupt system they had helped build. It was, by any objective measure, a disappointing outcome. But it was also the best outcome that was legally achievable. The evidence connecting Whitfield executives to specific criminal acts was circumstantial. The money trail was designed to be untraceable. The witnesses who could have provided direct testimony had a habit of dying unexpectedly or developing sudden amnesia. Simone had learned over the years to accept imperfect victories. The judges were gone. The prosecutors were gone. The system that had allowed corruption to flourish was being reformed, one statute at a time, one oversight committee at a time, one brave whistleblower at a time. It was slow. It was frustrating. It was the only way change actually happened. Marcus Delroy's nonprofit, the Exonery Support Network, had grown from a one-man operation run out of his mother's basement to a national organization with offices in 12 states. Simone visited the Fort Myers office on the anniversary of his release. It had become an annual tradition, a reminder of why she did what she did. The office was small but busy. Volunteers staffing phone lines, caseworkers reviewing files, a bulletin board covered with photographs of clients, people who had been wrongfully convicted and were now rebuilding their lives. Marcus met her at the door. He had aged in the 5 years since his release. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, gray in his hair that had come too early. Prison did that to people, stole years from their faces even as it stole years from their lives, but his smile was genuine. "Agent Halstead," he extended his hand. "Thank you for coming. I told you to call me Simone, and I told you that feels weird." He laughed. "You're the person who saved my life. Formality seems appropriate." She shook his hand. He led her through the office, introducing her to staff and volunteers, showing her the new case management system they had implemented, explaining their expansion plans for the coming year. "We're working with 347 clients now," he said. "Everything from housing assistance to job training to trauma counseling. Most of them don't need much, just someone who understands what they've been through, someone who believes them. That's more than most of them ever had." "It's not enough." His voice was quiet. "There are thousands more out there, tens of thousands. People who were convicted by corrupt judges or incompetent lawyers, or prosecutors who cared more about their win rate than the truth. People who are sitting in cells right now, knowing they're innocent, waiting for someone to notice." He stopped at a window overlooking the parking lot. "I think about that sometimes. The people who are still waiting. The ones who don't have an FBI agent documenting their case. The ones who are going to die in prison for crimes they didn't commit. I think about them, too. Does it ever get easier, knowing you can't save everyone?" Simone considered the question. "No, but you learn to focus on the ones you can save. You learn to celebrate the small victories. You learn to keep going even when the weight of it feels unbearable." "Is that what you do? Keep going?" "It's the only thing I know how to do." Marcus was silent for a long moment. "I have something for you." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. "I was going to mail it, but since you're here..." Simone unwrapped the tissue. Inside was a key, old, tarnished, attached to a simple metal keychain. "It's the key to my old apartment," Marcus explained. "The one I had before I was arrested. I've been carrying it for 10 years. Through the trial, through prison, through everything. It was my reminder that I had a life before all this, that I had a home to go back to." "Why are you giving it to me?" "Because I don't need it anymore." He smiled. "I have a new home now, a new life, because of what you did." Simone looked at the key. Such a small thing, such an enormous weight. "I want you to have it," Marcus continued, "as a reminder. When the work gets hard, when the system seems impossible to change, when you wonder if any of it matters, look at that key. And remember that it does matter. To me. To everyone you've helped. To everyone you're going to help. Simone closed her hand around the key. Thank you. No. Marcus shook his head. Thank you. This story is based on real patterns of corruption that exist in courthouses across America. If you found it powerful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that expose injustice and celebrate the people who fight back. Angela Mendez had become one of the most recognized faces of the criminal justice reform movement. She testified before Congress. She appeared on national news programs. She wrote op-eds that were published in the Washington Post and the New York Times. She became the public face of a bill, the Mendez-Delroy Justice Reform Act, that would require independent oversight of judicial conduct in all federal courthouses. Simone watched one of her interviews on a hotel room television in Tallahassee, where she was working on a new case. When I was convicted, Angela said, looking directly into the camera, I thought my life was over. I thought the system had failed me and there was nothing I could do about it. I thought I was alone. The interviewer leaned forward. But you weren't alone. No, I wasn't. Angela's voice was steady. There was a woman sitting in that courtroom, a woman I thought was just a paralegal, who was documenting everything. She was building a case that would eventually set me free. She was fighting for me when I didn't even know I had someone in my corner. Have you been in contact with Agent Halstead since your release? We've spoken a few times. She's not someone who seeks attention. She does the work and moves on to the next case. But I want her to know, I want everyone who's doing this work to know, that it matters. Every document you file, every pattern you identify, every small step forward, it matters. Simone turned off the television. She thought about all the cases she had worked since Collier County, the judges she had helped remove, the prosecutors she had helped convict, the corrupt systems she had helped dismantle, and she thought about all the cases she hadn't worked, all the corruption she hadn't uncovered, all the innocent people still sitting in cells, waiting for someone to notice. The work was never finished. It would never be finished. But she kept going anyway. Yolanda Baptiste retired on her 65th birthday. The Collier County Public Defender's Office threw her a party. Cake and punch in the conference room, speeches from colleagues and former clients, a plaque commemorating her 30 years of service. Simone attended. She stood in the back of the room, watching the woman she had deceived for 7 months receive the recognition she deserved. After the speeches, Yolanda found her. You came. I wanted to see you honored. You deserve it. Do I? Yolanda's voice was contemplative. I spent 18 years in that courthouse, watching Oberlin and Kavanaugh destroy lives, and I never did anything about it. I filed motions I knew would be denied. I made arguments to juries I knew wouldn't listen. I told myself there was nothing I could do. You did everything you could within the system. The system was broken. I should have gone outside it. I should have... She stopped, shook her head. I should have done what you did. You couldn't have done what I did. You didn't have the resources. You didn't have the legal authority. You didn't have the courage. Yolanda finished the sentence. I didn't have the courage. You did. They stood in silence for a moment. I've thought about it a lot over the years, Yolanda said. What you did, how you did it, the choices you made. And I've decided that I was wrong to be angry with you. You did what needed to be done. You made impossible choices, and you lived with the consequences. You saved more people than I ever could have. I couldn't have done it without your office, without your cover. Maybe not, but you would have found another way. Yolanda smiled slightly. That's who you are. You find ways. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. She extended her hand. Thank you, Agent Halstead, for everything. Simone shook her hand. Thank you, Ms. Baptiste, for giving me a chance to make a difference. Garrett Novak was appointed to the federal bench 3 years after Kavanaugh's conviction. He became exactly the kind of judge that Franklin Oberlin had never been: fair, impartial, committed to the law above all else. His courtroom became known as a place where justice was actually served, where defendants received fair trials, where the Constitution meant something. Simone attended his investiture ceremony. She sat in the back of the courtroom, watching as he raised his right hand and swore to uphold the laws of the United States. Afterward, at the reception, he found her. "You look uncomfortable." "I don't like crowds." "I remember." He handed her a glass of sparkling water. "You always sat alone in the cafeteria. I thought it was because you didn't like people. Now I realize it was because you couldn't risk getting close to anyone." "Something like that." "Must be lonely, the work you do." Simone considered the question. "It is, but loneliness is the price of effectiveness. The more people who know what you're doing, the more likely someone will compromise the operation." "And now? Now that Collier County is behind you?" "Now there are other cases, other operations, other courthouses where the system is broken and people are suffering." She sipped her water. "The work doesn't end, Judge Novak. It just moves to a new location." "Will it ever be enough? Will there ever come a day when you can stop?" Simone looked around the room, at the attorneys and judges and court staff, all celebrating the investiture of a good man to an important position, at the system slowly, imperfectly, healing itself. "I don't know. Maybe not in my lifetime, but maybe, if enough people keep fighting, in someone else's." Novak nodded slowly. "I hope so." "So do I." 10 years after the Collier County arrests, Simone Halstead was promoted to Supervisory Special Agent. She now ran the FBI's Public Corruption Unit for the entire southeastern United States. She oversaw 37 agents, 17 active investigations, and an annual budget of $12 million. She had trained the next generation of undercover operatives, agents who would do what she had done, who would sit in courtrooms and document corruption and wait for the moment to strike. She had testified before Congress on judicial reform. She had consulted on legislation that would require transparency in sentencing decisions. She had become, without ever seeking it, a symbol of what one person could accomplish when they refused to accept injustice. But she had never forgotten where it started. On the anniversary of the DOJ hearing, March 25th, she returned to the coffee shop across from the Collier County Courthouse. It had changed over the years. New ownership, new decor, new menu. But the view was the same. The courthouse steps, where she had watched Kavanaugh being led away in handcuffs. The windows of courtroom 4B, where she had spent 7 months documenting the destruction of innocent lives. She ordered a latte, sat by the window, watched the courthouse in silence. The building looked the same, but everything inside had changed. New judges, new prosecutors, new oversight committees and transparency requirements and accountability measures. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. The system was too large, too complex, too human to ever be free of corruption entirely. But it was better, and that mattered. Her phone rang. She answered. "Halstead." "Agent Halstead, this is Director Morrison. Do you have a moment?" The FBI director, calling her personally. That was unusual. "Of course, sir. I wanted to let you know before the announcement goes out. We're creating a new position, Deputy Assistant Director for Public Integrity, national scope, oversight of all corruption investigations across the country." Simone's heart rate increased slightly. "That's significant." "It is, and I'd like you to take it." She was silent for a long moment. "Sir, I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm the right person for a desk job in Washington." "It's not entirely a desk job. You'd still be involved in major investigations. You'd still be making a difference." A pause. "But I understand your hesitation. You're a field agent at heart. You like being close to the action." "I like being useful." "You'd be useful in this role. More useful than you are now, frankly. You'd be shaping policy, training the next generation, building systems that will outlast any single investigation. Simone looked out the window at the courthouse, thought about everything she had sacrificed to get here. The years undercover, the relationships she had never built, the life she had never lived. Thought about everything she had accomplished, the judges removed, the prosecutors convicted, the innocent people freed. Thought about everything that still needed to be done. Can I have some time to think about it? Take a week. But Halstead, I hope you'll say yes. The Bureau needs people like you. The country needs people like you. Thank you, sir. I'll be in touch. She ended the call, finished her latte, looked at the courthouse one last time. That evening, Simone drove to the address she had memorized years ago but never visited. A small house in a quiet neighborhood in Cape Coral, a garden in the front yard, tomatoes, just like her mother had mentioned in the letter. She parked on the street, sat in her car, watched the lights in the windows. She had not been home in 7 years, had not seen her parents since before the Collier County operation began, had not allowed herself to be vulnerable, to be known, to be loved. The work had consumed everything, but the work was not everything. She got out of the car, walked up the path, rang the doorbell. The door opened. Her mother stood there, older now, grayer, but with the same warm eyes that Simone remembered from childhood. Simone? Hi, Mom. Her mother's hand went to her mouth. Tears began to flow. Oh, sweetheart, you're here. You're actually here. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her daughter. Simone stood still for a moment. Then, slowly, she hugged her mother back. I'm here, she whispered. I'm finally here. Later that night, after dinner, real dinner, just like her mother had promised, Simone sat on the back porch with her father. He had aged too. His hair was white now, his hands spotted with age, but he still had the same quiet strength that had defined her childhood. Your mother tells me you might be getting a promotion. Word travels fast. She talks to your handler sometimes. Don't tell her I told you. He smiled. She worries about you. We both do. I know. Are you going to take it? The new job? Simone looked up at the stars. The Florida sky was clear tonight, endless and dark and filled with light. I don't know. It would mean leaving the field, becoming an administrator, pushing paper instead of working cases. Would that be so bad? It would be different. I've spent my whole career in the field. I don't know how to do anything else. You could learn. Her father's voice was gentle. You've learned harder things. Have I? You learned to watch innocent people suffer without intervening. You learned to carry the weight of impossible choices. You learned to keep going when the work seemed endless and the victories seemed too small to matter. He reached over and took her hand. If you can learn those things, you can learn to be an administrator. Simone was silent for a long moment. I'm tired, Dad. I've been tired for years, but I don't know how to stop. Maybe you don't have to stop. Maybe you just have to find a different way to keep going. She looked at her father, at the man who had taught her to stand up for what was right, to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves, to never accept injustice. What if I'm not ready? No one is ever ready for the next step. We take it anyway. He squeezed her hand. That's what courage is. 1 week later, Simone called Director Morrison. I'll take the job. I'm glad to hear it. You start in 30 days. There's a lot of work to be done. There always is. She hung up the phone, looked around her apartment. The same beige apartment she had lived in for 10 years. The photographs on the nightstand, the letters in the drawer, the key from Marcus Delroy on her keychain. It was time for a change. It was time to build something new. On her last day in the field, Simone visited the Collier County Courthouse one final time. She walked through the metal detectors, rode the elevator to the 4th floor, stood outside courtroom 4B. The nameplate on the door read, The Honorable Maria Santos, presiding. Maria Santos. Simone remembered the name from her files, the woman who had filed a complaint against Tate Reddick in 2021, the complaint that had been dismissed as unfounded. Now she was a judge, sitting in the same courtroom where Oberlin had destroyed lives, building something new from the wreckage of what had been. Simone smiled, turned and walked away. Outside, the Florida sun was bright and warm. The palm trees swayed in the breeze. The courthouse steps were crowded with attorneys and defendants and witnesses, people whose lives would be shaped by what happened inside that building. She had done what she could. Now it was time for others to carry on the work. She got into her car, started the engine, drove away from Collier County for the last time. In the rearview mirror, the courthouse grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. But the work continued, it would always continue, and Simone Halstead, Special Agent, Supervisory Special Agent, Deputy Assistant Director, would be there, fighting, documenting, making a difference, one case at a time.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you found the content helpful, please remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. We are always here to listen.